I am Tessa, 34 years old, and my life changed forever at my sister Amanda's baby shower. What should have been a joyous family celebration turned into a nightmare when my mother-in-law crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I always thought family meant protection and love, but that day taught me sometimes family can hurt you the deepest. Before I tell you how my world turned upside down at what should have been a joyful celebration, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for your child. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Massachusetts, I never imagined the family drama that would eventually consume my life. My parents raised me with simple values: work hard, be kind, and always protect your family. These principles guided me through college and into my career as an elementary school teacher, where I found my passion for helping children learn and grow. 8 years ago, I met James at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was charming, intelligent, and had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. After a whirlwind romance, we married in a small ceremony on the coast, surrounded by our closest friends and family. That was the day I first met his mother, Margaret. Initially, Margaret seemed welcoming enough. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored blue suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, and wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes when she hugged me. "Welcome to the family, dear," she had said, her grip on my shoulders a bit too tight. "I hope you'll make my James happy." James was her only child. His father had died when he was just 7, leaving Margaret to raise him alone with her family money. Perhaps that explained her possessiveness, the way she always referred to him as my James, even after we were married. I tried to understand to make allowances for her attachment to her son. 2 years into our marriage, we welcomed our daughter Lily. From the moment she was born, with her big, curious eyes and tiny, grasping fingers, she became my whole world. Lily grew into a creative, sensitive child who loved drawing, making up stories, and caring for the stray cats in our neighborhood. But she also struggled with anxiety, often worrying about small things and seeking reassurance that she was doing things right. As Lily grew, Margaret's true colors began to show more clearly. What started as helpful suggestions about my parenting turned into outright criticism. "Lily wouldn't be so anxious if you didn't coddle her so much," she would say within earshot of my daughter. Or, "In my day, children knew how to behave in public," when Lily was simply being a normal, energetic child. James rarely stood up to his mother. "That's just how she is," he would say, shrugging off her comments. "She means well." But I saw how Lily would shrink a little every time Margaret made one of her cutting remarks, how my daughter would try harder and harder to win the approval of a grandmother who seemed determined to find fault. There were incidents over the years that should have been red flags. The Christmas when Margaret gave expensive gifts to our nieces and nephews, but only a generic colouring book to Lily. The time she accidentally excluded Lily from family photos. The dinner where she compared Lily unfavourably to her cousin Zoe, who was 2 years older and taking ballet lessons. "Some children just have natural grace," Margaret had said, eyeing Lily. "Others, well, they have other qualities." Through it all, I tried to maintain peace for James's sake. He was caught in an impossible position, torn between his mother and his wife and daughter. I watched him struggle with the conflict, saw how it wore him down, and I didn't want to make it worse. So I smiled through gritted teeth, redirected conversations when they became too pointed, and did my best to shield Lily from the worst of her grandmother's barbs. My sister Amanda was never much help in these situations. 2 years younger than me, with a successful career in marketing, Amanda had always been more focused on her professional life than family dynamics. When I tried to talk to her about Margaret's behaviour, she would dismiss my concerns. "You're being too sensitive," she would say. "Not everyone has to love their in-laws." When Amanda announced she was pregnant with her first child, I was genuinely thrilled for her. Despite our differences, she was my only sister, and I wanted to support her through this new chapter in her life. So when she asked me to help plan her baby shower, I agreed immediately, even though I knew Margaret would insist on being involved. The planning meetings quickly became a battleground. Margaret pushed for an extravagant affair at the Westfield Country Club with imported flowers and custom party favours. "Nothing but the best for my grandson's cousin," she declared, having somehow decided the baby would be a boy despite Amanda not knowing the gender. I suggested something more intimate and meaningful, perhaps in Amanda's backyard, with close friends and family. This was met with a dismissive wave of Margaret's hand. "How provincial," she said. "This isn't a child's birthday party, Tessa." In the end, Margaret won out, partly because she offered to pay for most of it, and partly because Amanda was swayed by the promise of luxury. The shower was scheduled for a Saturday in May at the country club with a guest list of 50 people, many of whom Amanda barely knew but were Margaret's friends and social connections. The day before the shower, James had to leave for an unexpected business trip. "I'm sorry to miss it," he said as he packed his suitcase. "But you'll be fine. Mum will behave, I promise." I nodded, not believing him for a second, but not wanting to start an argument before he left. That night, as I helped Lily pick out her outfit for the shower, she asked me a question that broke my heart. "Mum, why doesn't Grandma Margaret like me?" I sat beside her on the bed, pulling her close. "Sweetie, it's not that she doesn't like you. She just has a different way of showing love. Some people find it hard to express their feelings." Lily looked up at me with those wise eyes that sometimes seemed older than her years. "I don't think that's it," she said softly. "I think she wishes I was different." I had no good answer for that because deep down I feared she was right. The morning of the baby shower dawned bright and clear, a perfect May day with blue skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of lilacs through our open windows. I woke up early, anxiety already gnawing at my stomach as I thought about the day ahead. Beside me, the empty space where James would normally sleep seemed to emphasize that I'd be facing Margaret alone today. From down the hall, I heard Lily humming to herself as she got ready. Despite my concerns about Margaret, my daughter was excited about the shower. Amanda was her only aunt, and the prospect of a new baby cousin had captured her imagination. For weeks, she'd been drawing pictures of what the baby might look like and making lists of potential names. When she came into the kitchen for breakfast, Lily was wearing the new dress we'd bought especially for the occasion, a pale yellow sundress with a pattern of tiny white daisies. She'd even attempted to style her own hair, pulling it into slightly lopsided pigtails that made my heart ache with love. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I said, straightening her pigtails. "Aunt Amanda is going to be so happy you're there today." Lily beamed, twirling to make her skirt float around her knees. "Do you think Grandma Margaret will like my dress?" she asked, and I heard the hopeful note in her voice that never seemed to fade despite years of disappointment. "I'm sure she will," I lied, forcing a smile. "Now eat your breakfast so we won't be late." The Westfield Country Club was located on the outskirts of town, an imposing stone building surrounded by manicured lawns and flowering gardens. As we pulled into the parking lot, I spotted Margaret's silver Mercedes already there, parked near the entrance. "Remember," I told Lily as we walked toward the building, "this is a special day for Aunt Amanda. Let's try to make it as nice as possible for her." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'll be super good, I promise." The shower was being held in the club's garden room, a large space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rose garden. By the time we arrived, Margaret had already transformed it into a showcase of extravagance. Crystal vases filled with white and blue hydrangeas adorned every surface. Delicate china teacups were arranged on tables covered in linen cloths. A mountain of expertly wrapped gifts occupied one corner, each package more elaborately decorated than the last. And there in the center of it all was Margaret directing the staff with imperious gestures as they arranged the final details. She was dressed in an expensive-looking sage green suit, a strand of pearls at her throat, her hair freshly colored and styled. She spotted us immediately, her gaze sweeping over us like a searchlight. "Tessa," she said, ear-kissing my cheek, "you're finally here. I was beginning to think you'd be late." She turned to Lily, her lips tightening almost imperceptibly. "And Lily, that's certainly a bright dress you're wearing." I felt Lily shrink beside me. "Thank you for all your work on the shower, Margaret," I said quickly. "Everything looks lovely." "Cool." Margaret nodded, accepting the compliment as her due. "Well, Amanda deserves the best. Now, Lily, be careful not to touch the crystal. Some of these pieces are antiques." She turned away before Lily could respond, calling out to a server about the placement of the champagne flutes. Over the next hour, guests began to arrive. Amanda made her entrance glowing in a blue maternity dress, her pregnancy finally showing at 5 months along. She squealed with delight at the decorations, hugging Margaret, and thanking her profusely while I stood awkwardly to the side. Lily stayed close to me initially, but as the room filled with guests, including several other children, she began to relax a little. My niece Zoe, 12 years old, and already acting like a teenager, was there with my brother-in-law's sister Diane. Margaret immediately made a fuss over Zoe complimenting her dress and asking about her recent dance recital while pointedly ignoring Lily. I watched as Margaret made her way around the room greeting guests and accepting compliments on the shower. She stopped frequently at the bar, set up in one corner, each time returning with her champagne glass refilled. With each drink, her voice grew a little louder, her gestures a little more expansive. Lily, meanwhile, was trying her best to fit in. She offered to help the servers pass around appetizers, carefully carrying trays of tiny sandwiches and fruit skewers. She played nicely with the younger children, sharing the coloring books and crayons that had been provided for kids' entertainment. Several times, I saw her glance at Margaret, seeking some sign of approval that never came. As the party progressed, the room grew warmer and more crowded. The noise level increased, a cacophony of female voices exclaiming over gifts and sharing pregnancy stories. I found myself cornered by one of Margaret's friends, a woman named Patricia, who was determined to tell me in excruciating detail about her grandson's achievements at boarding school. Across the room, I could see Amanda sitting in a decorated chair opening gifts, with Margaret hovering beside her. Lily had positioned herself near them, watching the proceedings with fascination. I kept one eye on her as I nodded along to Patricia's monologue, alert for any sign of trouble. The moment came when Amanda began unwrapping a particularly large gift, which turned out to be an ornate crystal baby bottle engraved with the family crest of Margaret's late husband. "It's been in the family for generations," Margaret announced proudly. "Each firstborn has taken their first drink from it." I saw several practical-minded mothers exchange glances, clearly thinking what I was that an antique crystal bottle was hardly a safe or sensible item for a newborn. But Amanda made all the right appreciative noises, holding it up for everyone to see. That was when my sister asked for help. "Tessa, could you come here? I need someone to write down who gave what for thank you notes." I excused myself from Patricia and made my way across the crowded room, losing sight of Lily momentarily as a group of women moved between us. By the time I reached Amanda's side a minute or so later, the scene had shifted. Margaret had placed the crystal bottle on a side table near the gift opening area. Lily, apparently trying to be helpful, had picked up a tray of desserts from a nearby server and was offering them to guests nearby. She was smiling, finally seeming to enjoy herself a little as people thanked her for the treats. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Lily stepped carefully toward the group surrounding Amanda, balancing the tray of mini pastries. She didn't see Margaret's expensive designer purse on the floor near the side table. Her foot caught the strap and she stumbled forward, arms outstretched to catch herself. The tray tilted. The pastries slid, and Lily's hand, reaching out for balance, knocked against the crystal baby bottle. It teetered for a heart-stopping moment on the edge of the table, then fell. The sound of shattering crystal cut through the party chatter like a gunshot. Every head turned. Every voice fell silent. And that's when my world changed forever. The crystal bottle exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces on the hardwood floor, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent room. For a fraction of a second, nobody moved. It was as if time itself had paused to witness what would happen next. Lily stood frozen in horror, her eyes wide and fixed on the shards of crystal scattered around her feet. The dessert tray hung limply from one hand, a few remaining pastries clinging precariously to its edge. Her small chest rose and fell rapidly with panicked breaths. Then Margaret moved. It was a movement so swift and unexpected that I couldn't react in time to stop it. One moment she was standing beside Amanda's chair, and the next she was directly in front of my daughter, her face transformed by rage. Her normally pale complexion had turned a deep mottled red that spread up her neck and across her cheeks. Her eyes, usually cool and evaluating, now bulged with fury. "How dare you touch that?" Margaret's voice was barely recognizable, a strangled screech that didn't sound human. Spittle flew from her lips as she loomed over Lily. "That bottle was an heirloom. It was priceless. You stupid, clumsy girl." Lily flinched back, the tray finally slipping from her fingers to clatter onto the floor. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." The sound of Margaret's hand connecting with Lily's cheek was like a whip crack in the hushed room. The force of the slap sent my 10-year-old daughter stumbling backward until she hit the wall with a dull thud. She slid down to a sitting position, one hand pressed against her reddening cheek, her eyes huge with shock and pain. For one eternal second, I couldn't move. My brain seemed unable to process what my eyes had just witnessed. My mother-in-law had struck my child. She had put her hands on my daughter. The impossibility of it paralyzed me. Then Lily's first sob broke the spell. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her cheek, her small body shaking with the force of her crying. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, where her lip had split against her teeth from the impact. I lunged forward, shoving past shocked guests, my vision tunneling until all I could see was my injured child. I dropped to my knees beside her, pulling her into my arms, my hands shaking as I tried to assess how badly she was hurt. "Let me see, baby," I murmured gently, pulling her hand away from her cheek. An angry red handprint was already forming the distinct shape of Margaret's fingers, visible on my daughter's pale skin. The sight of it ignited something primal inside me, a rage so pure and hot that it threatened to consume everything in its path. Behind me, Margaret was still ranting. "Look what you've done," she said, gesturing wildly at the broken crystal. "You've ruined everything. This is why children shouldn't be at adult functions. No discipline, no respect for valuable things." I turned slowly to face her, still cradling Lily against me. The room had broken into murmurs, now guests exchanging uncomfortable glances, some moving discreetly toward the exit. Amanda sat in her chair, one hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes darting between me and Margaret. "You hit my child," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "You put your hands on my daughter." Margaret waved dismissively. "She broke a priceless family heirloom. A little discipline is what she needs. If you provided more structure at home, this wouldn't have happened." I helped Lily to her feet, keeping her tucked close to my side. "Apologize to my daughter," I demanded. "Apologize right now." Margaret drew herself up, indignation radiating from every pore. "I will do no such thing. If anyone should apologize, it's her. That bottle survived 5 generations of my husband's family, and now it's destroyed because your daughter can't watch where she's going." The room seemed to recede as I stared at this woman, this person who had always claimed to value family above all else, yet could strike a child over an object. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I should have recognized years ago. Margaret was not just difficult or opinionated. She was toxic, dangerous. "Where is James?" Margaret suddenly demanded, looking around as if expecting her son to materialize and take her side. "He needs to hear about this behavior." "James is out of town," I said coldly. "But don't worry, he'll hear exactly what happened here today. Every single detail." I turned to Amanda, still sitting shell-shocked in her chair. "I'm sorry, but we're leaving. Call me later." My sister nodded mutely, her hand still covering her mouth. As I guided Lily toward the door, Margaret called after us, her voice dripping with venom. "This is typical of you, Tessa, making a scene and ruining Amanda's special day. Always the drama queen." I didn't turn around. I didn't trust myself to respond. The rage inside me was a living thing threatening to explode if I acknowledged her words. Instead, I focused on getting Lily safely out of that building and away from the woman who had hurt her. In the car, Lily's crying turned to hiccuping sobs as I gently applied a cold water bottle to her swelling cheek. "I didn't mean to break it, Mom," she kept saying. "It was an accident." "I know, sweetheart. I know." I held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, trying to control my shaking. "What happened was not your fault. Not any of it." "Grandma Margaret hates me," Lily whispered, and the resignation in her voice broke something inside me. This wasn't a new thought for her. It was a conclusion she'd reached long ago, and now had confirmed in the most traumatic way possible. "Listen to me," I said, pulling back to look into her tear-stained face. "What your grandmother did was wrong. Very wrong. No one is ever allowed to hit you, no matter what you do or what gets broken. Objects can be replaced. You are irreplaceable." As I drove us home, my phone buzzed repeatedly with incoming texts. I ignored them all, focusing instead on occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at Lily, who sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window with vacant eyes that worried me more than her tears had. At home, I took photos of Lily's face, documenting the handprint that was now turning from red to purple at the edges, the small cut on her lip, the slight swelling under her eye. Then I gave her an ice pack, wrapped in a soft cloth, and settled her on the couch with her favorite stuffed animal and a movie. Only then did I check my phone. There were 5 texts from Amanda ranging from, "Are you okay?" to "Please call me." 2 from Margaret that I couldn't bring myself to read, and 1 from James sent before any of this happened, saying he'd be home late tomorrow evening. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands flat on its surface, and tried to figure out what to do next. One thing was crystal clear: Margaret would never be alone with my daughter again. Beyond that, I wasn't sure how to proceed. Should I call the police, a lawyer? Was this technically assault on a minor? Most importantly, how would James react when he learned what his mother had done? As the afternoon stretched into evening, Lily grew quieter and more withdrawn. She picked at her dinner, wincing when the movement stretched her bruised cheek. When I suggested a bath before bed, she nodded listlessly and allowed me to help her, something she hadn't needed in years. That night, after tucking her in and checking that she was asleep, I sat in the dark living room and finally allowed myself to cry. They were tears of rage, of guilt for not protecting my child, and of fear for what would come next, because I knew with absolute certainty that our family would never be the same again, and deep down I was terrified that when forced to choose between his mother and us, James might make the wrong choice. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the moment of Margaret's slap in an endless loop. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's face as she hit the wall, the shock and betrayal in her eyes. I saw the room full of people who had witnessed it, all their expressions, ranging from horror to a terrible knowing look that suggested they weren't entirely surprised by Margaret's behaviour. Around midnight, I heard a soft cry from Lily's room. I found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, her breathing fast and shallow. "I had a bad dream," she whispered as I sat beside her. Grandma Margaret was chasing me, and no one would help me hide. I held her until she fell back asleep, my heart breaking at how quickly the incident had embedded itself in her subconscious. When I was certain she was deeply asleep, I slipped out of her room and made a decision. Taking out my phone, I texted James, "We need to talk as soon as you get home. Something serious happened with your mother and Lily." The reply came almost immediately, despite the late hour. "What's wrong? Is everyone okay?" I debated how much to say via text, then settled on, "Lily is physically safe but upset. Your mother slapped her at the baby shower. Hard. We'll talk when you're home." Then I turned off my phone, not ready for whatever response might come next. The morning brought new challenges. Lily woke up with her cheek visibly bruised, a dark purple smudge against her pale skin. When I suggested she stay home from school, she nodded silently, lacking the energy to even seem relieved. "My face hurts," she said softly at breakfast, pushing away a bowl of her favourite cereal after just 2 bites. "And my head. I hit it on the wall." I gave her children's pain reliever and checked her pupils, worried about a concussion. They seemed normal, but I made a mental note to call the paediatrician if her headache persisted. Mid-morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda standing there, her face drawn with worry. "I had to check on you guys," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Is Lily okay? Mum called me 6 times last night, asking if I'd heard from you." At the mention of our mother, I felt a flash of irritation. "Did you tell her what happened? That her precious mother-in-law assaulted my child?" Amanda winced. "I tried, but you know how she is. She thinks you're overreacting. She said accidents happen and Lily should have been more careful around valuable items." "Overreacting," I repeated incredulously. "Margaret slapped Lily so hard she hit the wall. Amanda, look at her face." I gestured toward the living room where Lily was curled up on the couch watching TV. Amanda peered around the corner, then sucked in a breath when she saw the bruise. "Oh God, Tessa, I didn't realize it was that bad. At the party, everything happened so fast." "And you didn't step in," I finished for her. "No one did. You all just sat there while that woman hit my daughter." "That's not fair," Amanda protested weakly. "It was shocking. No one expected it. And then you left so quickly." I laughed bitterly. What was I supposed to do? Stay and make pleasant conversation with the woman who had just assaulted my child? Pretend everything was fine, so as not to ruin your shower? Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Of course not. I wish I'd done something, said something." She placed a hand on her swollen belly. "I've been thinking all night about what if someone treated my baby that way. I'd lose my mind." Her words deflated some of my anger. "I'm sorry. I know it's not your fault. I trailed off, not even sure how to articulate the storm of emotions inside me. "Does James know?" Amanda asked, following me into the kitchen where I put the kettle on for tea. "I texted him last night. He's flying home today." "What do you think he'll do?" I gripped the edge of the counter. "I don't know. That's what terrifies me. He's always made excuses for her behaviour. But this is different. This has to be different." I turned to face my sister. "If he takes her side on this, Amanda, I don't think our marriage will survive." Amanda's eyes widened. "Surely it won't come to that? James loves you and Lily more than anything." "Does he?" I wasn't so sure anymore. "You don't know what it's been like all these years. The little comments, the constant criticism, the way Margaret undermines me as a parent, as a wife, and James just lets it happen because it's easier than standing up to her." We sat at the kitchen table with our tea, speaking in low voices to avoid Lily overhearing. Amanda listened as I recounted years of incidents I'd mostly kept to myself, not wanting to burden others with my in-law problems. "I had no idea it was this bad," she said when I finished. "Why didn't you tell me?" I shrugged. "What could you have done besides you've always liked Margaret? She treats you differently." "Because I'm not married to her son," Amanda said quietly. "I'm not a threat." The rest of the day passed slowly. Amanda left after extracting a promise that I'd call if I needed anything. I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from James and a text saying his flight would land at 4. There were also 7 texts and 4 voicemails from Margaret, all of which I deleted without reading or listening to. Around 3 o'clock, Lily complained that her head still hurt, so I called the pediatrician who recommended bringing her in. The doctor examined her, gently confirming there was no concussion, but documenting the bruise and split lip in her medical record. "How did this happen?" she asked Lily directly, her tone professional but kind. Lily looked at me, then back at the doctor. "My grandmother hit me," she said in a small voice, "because I broke something valuable by accident." The doctor's expression remained neutral, but I saw a muscle tighten in her jaw. "I see," she said, making a note in the chart. "And has your grandmother ever hit you before?" Lily shook her head. "No, but she's always mad at me. She says I'm clumsy and not as good as my cousin Zoe." After the appointment, the doctor asked to speak with me privately. "I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse," she said once Lily was out of earshot. Given that this was done by a family member, I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. "I understand. We're dealing with it within the family right now, but I know you have to follow protocol." "Is your daughter safe at home? Is there any risk of this happening again?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "My husband and I will ensure she never has unsupervised contact with his mother again." By the time we arrived home, it was nearly 5:30. James's car was in the driveway. Lily, who normally would have run inside, excited to see her father after his business trip, now hesitated at the car door. "Is Grandma Margaret in there?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "No, sweetheart, just Dad, and he loves you very much and will want to make sure you're okay." Lily nodded, but the way she gripped my hand as we walked to the door told me she wasn't entirely convinced. James met us in the hallway, his face a mask of concern. "Lily," he said, dropping to one knee to be at her level. Then he saw her face, the purple bruise stark against her pale skin, and his expression crumpled. "Oh God, Lily Bug." Lily stood stiffly as he hugged her, not returning the embrace. Over her shoulder, James looked at me, questions in his eyes that I wasn't ready to answer in front of our daughter. "Lily, why don't you go up to your room for a little while?" I suggested. "Dad and I need to talk." Once she was upstairs, James and I moved to the kitchen. He paced back and forth while I leaned against the counter, my arms crossed protectively over my chest. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. I recounted the events of the baby shower in detail, keeping my tone as neutral as possible, though my hands shook with remembered rage. James listened without interrupting, his face growing more troubled with each word. When I finished, he ran a hand through his hair. "There must be some misunderstanding, so," he said finally. "Mom wouldn't. She's not violent. She's never hit anyone in her life." The defense of his mother, even in the face of incontrovertible evidence, sparked my temper. "Are you calling me a liar? Or Lily? There was a room full of witnesses, James. Your mother slapped our daughter hard enough to leave a handprint on her face that's still visible a day later. She split her lip. She caused her to hit her head against a wall. I'm not saying it didn't happen," he backtracked. "Just that maybe she didn't mean to hit her that hard. Maybe she was just shocked about the bottle breaking and reacted without thinking. I don't care if she meant to or not," I exploded. "She hit our child over a piece of crystal. There is no excuse that makes that okay." James sank into a chair at the kitchen table, his shoulders slumped. "I know, you're right, I just..." He looked up at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. "What do we do now? Now we make sure Margaret never has the opportunity to hurt Lily again. She's not to be alone with her. In fact, I don't want her anywhere near Lily until she acknowledges what she did and makes a genuine apology." James nodded slowly. "I'll talk to her, get her side of the story." "Her side?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What possible side could justify hitting a 10-year-old child? "Your child, James." "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly. "I just meant I need to understand what was going through her mind, why she reacted that way, so I can make sure it never happens again." I stared at him, suddenly seeing with painful clarity the pattern that had defined our marriage. James always trying to understand his mother, to make allowances for her behaviour, to find a middle ground that didn't exist. "No," I said quietly. I'm done with this dance, James. Your mother hurt our daughter physically and emotionally. She's been hurting her emotionally for years, and you've let it happen because it was easier than confronting the truth your mother is abusive. James flinched at the word. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? Is it? What would you call someone who deliberately and systematically undermines a child's self-esteem, who criticizes and belittles her at every opportunity, who struck her in anger? If it was anyone other than your mother, what would you call it? He had no answer for that, and we sat in tense silence until a small noise from the doorway made us both turn. Lily stood there, her eyes wide and uncertain. I heard yelling, she said. Are you fighting because of me? No, sweetie, I said quickly, moving to put an arm around her. We're just trying to figure things out. James looked at his daughter's bruised face, then back at me. Something in his expression shifted a resolve I hadn't seen before, hardening his features. We're going to make this right, Lilybug, he said. I promise. But as I met his gaze over our daughter's head, I wondered if that was a promise he could keep. Because making this right would mean choosing unequivocally between his mother and his family, and I wasn't sure James was capable of making that choice. The next morning, James announced he would be visiting his mother that afternoon to discuss what had happened. I need to make it clear to her that what she did was unacceptable, he said over breakfast, his voice firmer than it had been the previous night. And that there will be consequences. I'm coming with you, I said immediately, not trusting him to stand his ground alone against Margaret. James shook his head. I think it's better if I talk to her first one-on-one. She's more likely to listen without feeling ganged up on. I laughed incredulously. Ganged up on James, she physically assaulted our daughter. This isn't about her feelings. I know that, he said, frustration edging into his tone. But I know my mother. If both of us show up, she'll get defensive and nothing will be resolved. Let me try it my way first. I wanted to argue further, but Lily entered the kitchen, then still in her pajamas, her bruised face a vivid reminder of what was at stake. Morning, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. How are you feeling today? Lily shrugged, not meeting our eyes as she slid into her chair. Okay, I guess. Does your head still hurt? James asked gently. A little. Not as bad as yesterday. She poked at the bowl of cereal I set in front of her without much interest. You don't have to go to school today if you don't feel up to it, I offered, though privately I worried about how long she might want to hide at home. I don't want to go, Lily said immediately. People will ask about my face. James and I exchanged concerned glances. This was a new dimension we hadn't fully considered the social repercussions for Lily. Kids would ask questions. Parents would gossip. How much should we share, and with whom we'll figure it out, James said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Maybe you can go back Monday when the bruise has faded a bit, and you can tell people you had an accident if you don't want to talk about what really happened. I bit my tongue, not wanting to contradict him in front of Lily, but not sure I agreed with the message that she should hide what her grandmother had done. Shouldn't Margaret face social consequences for her actions? After breakfast, James retreated to his home office to make work calls, while Lily and I settled in the living room with a board game. She was quieter than usual, her movements mechanical as she moved her piece around the board, her mind clearly elsewhere. Penny for your thoughts, I asked gently after she'd been staring at the same space on the board for nearly a minute. Lily looked up, her eyes troubled. Will I have to see Grandma Margaret again? The question hit me like a physical blow. Of course, that would be her primary concern. Not until you're ready, I assured her. And never alone. Dad or I will always be with you. What if I'm never ready? I hesitated, not wanting to make promises I couldn't keep, but also needing to reassure her. Then we'll deal with that. Your safety and feelings come first. Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied for the moment, and we returned to our game. But the question lingered in my mind. What if she was never ready? What would that mean for our family dynamic? Around 1 o'clock, James emerged from his office, dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks, clearly preparing to visit his mother. I'll be back in a couple of hours, he told me, gathering his keys and wallet from the entry table. What exactly are you planning to say to her? I asked, following him to the door. James sighed. That what she did was completely unacceptable. That she needs to understand how seriously she's damaged her relationship with Lily and with us. That there will need to be major changes if she wants to remain part of our lives. And an apology, I added. A real one, not one of those, I'm sorry you were upset, non-apologies. Yes, of course, he nodded, though knowing Mum that might be the hardest part. After he left, the house felt eerily quiet. Lily had retreated to her room to read, and I found myself pacing restlessly, unable to settle to any task. I kept checking my phone, though I knew James wouldn't be calling or texting during his confrontation with Margaret. My mind ran through endless scenarios of how their conversation might go. Would Margaret double down on her actions, insisting Lily had deserved the slap? Would she try to manipulate James with tears and claims that I was turning him against her, or would she miraculously recognize the gravity of what she'd done and show genuine remorse? Based on 8 years of knowing the woman, I wasn't optimistic about the latter. Nearly 3 hours later, I heard James's car in the driveway. From the window, I could see him sitting behind the wheel for several long moments before finally getting out his movements heavy with weariness. My stomach clenched with apprehension. When he walked through the door, his face told me everything I needed to know before he spoke a word. The meeting had not gone well. "How bad?" I asked quietly. James dropped onto the couch, loosening his collar button as if it were choking him. "Worse than I expected." She refused to acknowledge she did anything wrong. Yeah. I sat beside him, anger and disappointment warring inside me, even though this was exactly the outcome I had anticipated. "Tell me what happened. All of it." James ran a hand over his face. She was waiting for me with tea and cookies like this was just a normal visit. When I brought up what happened at the shower, she immediately started talking about how valuable that bottle was, how it had been in her husband's family for generations. "The bottle," I repeated flatly. "Not Lily." "Right." When I tried to redirect her point out that nothing material is worth hurting a child over, she got defensive. Said Lily had been careless, that children today have no respect for precious things because parents don't teach them properly. He glanced at me apologetically. "That was directed at you, obviously." "Obviously." I echoed, my hands curling into fists in my lap. I told her that regardless of how she felt about the bottle breaking, physically striking Lily was completely unacceptable. That's when she... He trailed off, looking pained. What did she say?" "She said she barely touched her, that Lily was being dramatic, falling against the wall like that for attention. She claimed it was just a light tap to get her attention, and that the fact that Lily reacted so strongly just proves she's too coddled." I shot to my feet, rage boiling through me. "She's calling our daughter a liar. The bruise on her face is still visible, for God's sake." "I pointed that out," James said wearily. Showed her the photos I took on my phone. She said it must have happened when Lily threw herself against the wall, that she's making it look worse than it is because she knows it will get her sympathy. I paced the living room, trying to process the sheer malicious denial in Margaret's response. She's gaslighting, trying to rewrite reality to make herself the victim instead of the perpetrator. "It gets worse," James said, his voice dropping lower. When I told her she'd need to sincerely apologize to Lily before having any contact with her again, she laughed. Actually laughed. Said I was being ridiculous, and that if anyone deserved an apology, it was her for having a family heirloom destroyed and then being vilified for a normal disciplinary action. "Normal," I sputtered. "There is nothing normal about hitting someone else's child." "I know," James said, holding up his hands placatingly. "That's what I told her. I said it wasn't her place to discipline Lily in any way, let alone physically. That as Lily's parents, you and I are the only ones who decide on appropriate consequences, and that we would never hit her." I stopped pacing to look at him directly. "And what did she say to that?" James's expression darkened. "She said that's why Lily is turning out the way she is. That she's spoiled and undisciplined, and that someday we'll regret not being firmer with her." He swallowed hard. That's when I realized there was no getting through to her. She genuinely believes she did nothing wrong. In her mind, she's the reasonable one, and we're overreacting. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "So what did you do?" I told her that until she acknowledges what she did was wrong and makes a genuine apology to Lily, she won't be seeing any of us. That her behaviour has consequences, even if she doesn't think so. Despite the awfulness of the situation, I felt a spark of pride in James for taking such a firm stance. "How did she react to that?" "Not well." He grimaced. "There were tears, accusations that I'm choosing that woman over my own mother, claims that I'm being manipulated. She brought up everything she's ever done for me, how she raised me alone after Dad died, how she paid for my education. The classic guilt trip," I murmured. "Exactly." When none of that worked, she switched tactics. Started saying she's getting older, might not have many years left, and do I really want to deprive her of time with her only grandchild over one little misunderstanding? The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been laughable if it weren't so damaging. "What did you say?" "That it wasn't a misunderstanding at all. that she had physically harmed my daughter and was now lying about it instead of taking responsibility, that if she wants to be part of our lives, she needs to acknowledge what she did and commit to changing her behaviour. James took a deep breath. And then I left. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. I'm proud of you. I know how hard that must have been. James looked at me with pain-filled eyes. The worst part is, I don't think she'll ever admit she was wrong. She's incapable of it, which means... He trailed off, the implications hanging heavily between us. Which means we may have to permanently limit her role in our lives. I finished for him. Or even cut her off completely. He nodded glumly. And that affects more than just us. The extended family holidays, family gatherings. It's going to create a rift that might never heal. That's not on us, I reminded him firmly. Margaret created this situation. She's the only one who can fix it. I know, he sighed. I just wish... Whatever he wished remained unsaid as Lily appeared in the doorway, looking uncertainly between us. Is everything okay? She asked. Did Dad talk to Grandma Margaret? James beckoned her over, making room for her on the couch between us. Yes, I did. I told her that what she did was very wrong and that she needs to apologize to you. Lily chewed her lower lip anxiously. What did she say? James and I exchanged a look over her head. How much should we share with her? She needs some time to think about things, James said, finally choosing a diplomatic answer. But until she's ready to apologize properly, you won't have to see her. Lily seemed to process this, her expression unreadable. Is she sorry for hitting me? The direct question caught James off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at me helplessly. I believed in being honest with Lily, within age-appropriate boundaries. Right now, Grandma Margaret doesn't think she did anything wrong, I said gently. But that doesn't mean she's right. What she did was absolutely wrong, and nothing you did deserved that reaction. Lily nodded slowly, absorbing this. So she still hates me. No, sweetheart, James said quickly. She doesn't hate you. She just... He fumbled for words. She has trouble understanding how her actions affect others, and she has some very old-fashioned ideas about how children should behave. Ideas that are wrong, I added firmly, not wanting Lily to internalize any sense that Margaret's behavior had been justified. For the rest of the evening, we tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, ordering pizza for dinner and watching a movie together. But the conversation with Margaret hung over us like a dark cloud, the first rumbles of a storm that would soon engulf our extended family. As I tucked Lily into bed that night, she asked me a question that broke my heart, but all over again. Am I a bad person because I don't want to see Grandma Margaret ever again? I sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair away from her face. Absolutely not. Your feelings are completely valid. She hurt you, and it's natural to want to avoid people who hurt us. But she's family, Lily said, echoing the refrain I'd used too often over the years to excuse Margaret's behaviour. Being family doesn't give anyone the right to mistreat you, I told her firmly. Sometimes we need to create distance from family members who harm us, at least until they recognise their behaviour and commit to changing. What if she never does? I smiled sadly, recognising the echo of my earlier thoughts. Then we'll handle it together. The three of us, your dad, you and me. We're a team and we'll always put your well-being first. As I kissed her goodnight and turned out the light, I wondered if I was making promises I couldn't keep. Family dynamics were complicated, loyalties divided. James had stood up to his mother today, but would his resolve hold if Margaret continued to pressure him? If extended family members took her side and isolated us, I wasn't sure. But I was certain of one thing: I would protect my daughter at any cost, even if it meant permanently altering our family structure. Because no relationship, no matter how important, was worth sacrificing Lily's sense of safety and self-worth. The storm was gathering. All we could do now was prepare for the lightning. Over the next 3 days, Margaret's campaign to control the narrative began in earnest. It started with a flood of text messages to James, alternating between tearful pleas about how much she missed him and Lily, and angry accusations about my influence over him. When those went unanswered, she moved on to other family members. My phone rang early Sunday morning. It was Amanda, her voice tight with stress. "Have you talked to Margaret?" she asked without preamble. I stiffened at the mention of her name. "No, why would I? She's been calling everyone. Me, our cousins, even some of the guests from the shower. She's telling people that you and James are keeping Lily from her because of a minor disciplinary incident that everyone's blowing out of proportion." My grip tightened on the phone. She slapped Lily hard enough to leave a bruise that's still visible 4 days later. How is that minor? I know, Amanda said quickly. I'm not saying I believe her, but she's convincing when she wants to be. The way she tells it, Lily was being careless and disrespectful, broke a family heirloom, and Margaret just gave her a light tap that Lily dramatically overreacted to. And people are buying this. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Amanda sighed. Some are, especially those who didn't actually see what happened or who only saw the aftermath. You know how Margaret can be when she sets her mind to something. She's casting herself as the wounded grandmother cut off from her beloved grandchild over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said through gritted teeth. It was assault. I know that, Tessa. I'm just warning you about what she's doing. She's building a coalition trying to pressure you and James into backing down. After I hung up with Amanda, I relayed the conversation to James, who had been in the shower while I took the call. His face darkened with each word. Classic mom, saying, he muttered. She can't admit she's wrong, so she's trying to force us to give in by turning everyone against us. Will it work? I asked bluntly. If enough family members take her side, will you cave? James looked hurt by the question. Of course not. I saw the bruise on Lily's face. I know what happened. But others didn't. And Margaret is apparently very persuasive. Let her talk, James said with uncharacteristic firmness. Anyone who believes her version of events over ours isn't someone whose opinion I value anyway. His resolve bolstered mine, but I still worried. This was only the beginning of what promised to be a long and painful family rift. Later that day, as if to prove my point, James's cousin Michael called. Michael had always been close to James. They had grown up almost like brothers after James's father died. But Michael had also been raised partly by Margaret after his own parents divorced, and he maintained a close relationship with her. I could hear only James's side of the conversation, but it was enough to understand that Michael was trying to play peacemaker. I appreciate what you're trying to do, James was saying, his voice tense. But this isn't something we can just smooth over. No, it's not about the bottle. She hit my daughter Michael, hard enough to bruise her face. No, Lily didn't throw herself against the wall for attention. She's 10 years old, not some manipulative teenager. Well, if that's what Mum told you, she's not being honest. The conversation continued in that vein for several minutes, James becoming increasingly frustrated as he tried to counter whatever narrative Margaret had fed Michael. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted. Michael thinks we're overreacting, he told me, slumping onto the couch. He says kids are resilient, and sometimes a stern hand is needed when they misbehave. That cutting Mum off is an extreme response that's going to hurt everyone in the family. Does he have children? I asked, already knowing the answer. No. Then his opinion on how children should be disciplined is irrelevant. James nodded, but I could see the toll these conversations were taking on him. He'd been raised to value family harmony above all else, to smooth over conflicts rather than confront them directly. Standing firm against his mother and potentially other family members went against everything in his nature. What does Michael suggest we do instead? I asked, curious about the alternative being proposed. James rubbed his temples. Accept Mum's version of events. Agree that everyone overreacted in the heat of the moment. Let Lily spend time with her again, with supervision, at least at family gatherings. Without an apology, without any acknowledgement of what she did wrong. That's the idea. Michael says Mum will come around in her own time if we don't push her. I snorted in disbelief. She'll come around to believing she was right all along and that we caved because we knew it. And Lily will learn that adults can hurt her without consequences as long as they're family. I know, James agreed wearily. I told Michael that wasn't an option, that this isn't about punishing Mum, it's about protecting Lily. And what did he say to that? That I've changed, that I never used to be so rigid, that maybe I should consider whether I'm being influenced too much by... He trailed off uncomfortably. By me, I finished. He thinks I'm the villain in this story, turning you against your poor, misunderstood mother. James didn't deny it, which was answer enough. The next day brought a new complication. Lily needed to return to school, having already missed 3 days. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a yellowish smudge, still visible, but less dramatic than before. We had a family meeting over breakfast to discuss what she should tell classmates and teachers if they asked about it. You can say you had an accident if that's easiest, James suggested, clearly favouring the path of least social discomfort. I frowned at this approach. Or you can tell the truth, that your grandmother hit you because you accidentally broke something. There's no shame in that for you, Lily. Lily pushed her scrambled eggs around her plate, not meeting our eyes. "I don't want everyone to know," she said finally. "They'll think our family is weird. It's entirely your choice what you share," I assured her, though privately I worried that teaching her to hide what had happened might reinforce the wrong message that Margaret's behaviour should be kept secret. When I dropped Lily off at school, her teacher Ms. Simmons pulled me aside. "I heard there was an incident at a family gathering," she said quietly. The school counsellor mentioned Lily might be dealing with some emotional fallout. I was momentarily taken aback, then remembered the doctor's mandatory reporting. Of course, that would have triggered notifications to the school. "Yes," I confirmed. "Lily's grandmother struck her during an argument. We're handling it as a family, but Lily might be more sensitive than usual for a while." Mrs. Simmons nodded understandingly. "I'll keep an eye on her. If she seems to be struggling, would you like me to let the counsellor know she might benefit from a check-in?" "That would be great, thank you." I was grateful for the school's support and the matter-of-fact way Mr. Simmons approached the situation without judgment or uncomfortable prying. That afternoon, James received an email from his aunt, Eleanor, Margaret's younger sister. Unlike the other family members who had contacted us, Eleanor's message was supportive. "James, I heard about what happened with Margaret and Lily. While I wasn't at the shower to witness it personally, I know my sister's temper and her inability to admit when she's crossed a line. I want you to know that I support your decision to protect your daughter. Margaret has always had difficulty controlling her emotions, especially when things don't go exactly as she plans. It's a pattern that goes back to our childhood. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help during this difficult time." The email was like a lifeline in a stormy sea, proof that not everyone was buying into Margaret's version of events. James forwarded it to me with a simple message: "At least someone gets it." That evening, Lily seemed withdrawn after school. When I asked how her day had gone, she just shrugged and said, "Fine." But later, as I was helping her with homework, she suddenly said, "Zoe knows what happened." "Your cousin Zoe?" I asked, surprised. "Did you tell her?" Lily shook her head. "No, but she texted me saying she was sorry her grandmother was mean to me. She said her mum told her not to talk about it, but she wanted me to know she doesn't think I did anything wrong." I felt a complicated mix of emotions at this. On one hand, I was touched by Zoe's kindness and solidarity. On the other, I was concerned that the adults in Zoe's life were instructing her to keep quiet about what she'd witnessed, as if Margaret's behaviour was something shameful that needed to be hidden. "That was nice of her," I said carefully. "How did it make you feel that she reached out?" Lily considered this. "Good, I guess. Like I'm not the only one who knows. Grandma Margaret was wrong." She hesitated, then added, "Zoe said Grandma Margaret has been mean to her sometimes too. Not hitting, but saying stuff that makes her feel bad." This confirmed what I'd long suspected, that Margaret's emotional manipulation wasn't limited to Lily. It made me even more determined to hold firm on our boundaries, not just for Lily's sake, but for any other children who might be subjected to Margaret's toxic behaviour. As the week progressed, the battle lines within the family became more clearly drawn. A few relatives like Eleanor expressed support for our position. Others sided firmly with Margaret, some going so far as to call or text James directly to tell him he was being unreasonable and disrespectful to his mother. A third group tried to remain neutral, uncomfortable, taking sides in what they saw as a private family matter. The pressure was beginning to wear on James. I could see it in the slump of his shoulders when another relative called to discuss the situation, in the dark circles under his eyes from restless nights and his distraction during dinner conversations. "Maybe we should consider family therapy," I suggested one night after a particularly difficult call with his Uncle George, who had berated James for nearly an hour about his duty to his mother. "Therapy?" James looked skeptical. "You think Mom would agree to that?" "Not initially with your mother," I clarified. "Just us three first, you, me and Lily, to help us navigate this situation in a healthy way. Then if Margaret ever shows willingness to acknowledge what happened and work on changing her behaviour, she could join some sessions." James thought about it, then nodded slowly. "That might be good. For Lily especially. This has to be confusing and scary for her." "For all of us," I said, reaching for his hand. "We're in uncharted territory here. Some professional guidance couldn't hurt." As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I found myself thinking about the upcoming family gathering for Memorial Day weekend. It was an annual tradition held at James's uncle's lakeside property. Everyone would be there, including Margaret. The event was still weeks away, but already I was dreading it. Would we go and face the tension head-on, stay home and face accusations of dividing the family? There were no easy answers. Whatever path we chose, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this conflict was nowhere near resolution. Margaret had shown no signs of backing down or acknowledging her behaviour. If anything, she was doubling down, casting herself as the victim and mobilising family members to her cause. The protective walls we had built around Lily would need to remain strong, because even as parts of the family rallied around Margaret, even as pressure mounted on James to fix things, by giving in the image of Lily's bruised face remained vivid in my mind, a constant reminder of what was at stake. This wasn't about family politics or saving face. It was about teaching my daughter that her boundaries matter, that she deserves respect, and that no one, not even family, has the right to hurt her. Those principles were non-negotiable, no matter how stormy the seas ahead might be. 2 weeks after the incident at the baby shower, we had our first family therapy session with Dr. Larson, a child psychologist specialising in family trauma. Her office was warm and inviting, with comfortable couches arranged in a circle and nature photography on the walls. Lily, initially nervous about the appointment, relaxed visibly when she saw the collection of fidget toys available for her use. "Let's start by talking about what brings you here today," Dr. Larson said once we were all settled. Her gentle but direct manner put me at ease immediately. James and I exchanged glances, silently debating who should explain. Finally, I took the lead, recounting what had happened at the baby shower and the family fallout since then. I tried to keep my description factual rather than emotional, though it was still difficult to talk about. Dr. Larson listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I mentioned the ongoing pressure from extended family members, she nodded knowingly. "Family systems often resist change," she explained. "When you set a boundary that disrupts the established dynamic, even when that boundary is healthy and necessary, other family members may push back, trying to restore what's familiar to them, even if what's familiar is actually harmful." "That's exactly what's happening," James said, relief evident in his voice at having our experience validated. "Everyone keeps saying we need to forgive and forget to move past this for the sake of family harmony." Dr. Larson turned to Lily, who had been quietly playing with a Tangle toy during our conversation. "Lily, how have you been feeling since what happened with your grandmother?" Lily shrugged, not making eye contact. "Okay, I guess." "It's all right if you're not okay," Dr. Larson assured her. "What happened was scary and confusing." Lily twisted the Tangle toy more vigorously. "I keep thinking about it, especially at night when I'm trying to sleep. I see Grandma Margaret's face all red and angry, and I feel the sting on my cheek again." She looked up suddenly. "Is that normal?" "Absolutely," Dr. Larson said warmly. "When something frightening happens, our brains try to process it by replaying the memory. It's like your mind is trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, because adults aren't supposed to hurt children." This seemed to reassure Lily somewhat. The rest of the session focused on establishing some coping strategies for all of us, Lily, for managing her anxiety and intrusive thoughts about the incident. James and me for dealing with the ongoing family pressure while staying united in our approach. As we were leaving Larson asked to speak with James and me briefly while Lily waited in the reception area. "You're doing the right thing," she told us once Lily was out of earshot. Standing firm on this boundary is crucial for Lily's sense of safety and self-worth. Children learn how they deserve to be treated by watching how the adults in their lives allow others to treat them. Her words strengthened my resolve, and I could see they had a similar effect on James. We scheduled weekly sessions for the foreseeable future, both for Lily individually and for us as a family. The day after our therapy session, James received an unexpected visitor at his office, his Aunt Eleanor Margaret's sister. She had driven over an hour to see him in person rather than continuing their conversation via email. She had some interesting things to say, James told me that evening after Lily had gone to bed. About Margaret's behaviour patterns over the years, things I never knew about. "Like what?" I asked, curling up beside him on the couch. James took a deep breath. "Apparently this isn't the first time Margaret has lashed out physically when angry. Eleanor says there were incidents when I was very young before my father died. Times when Mom would lose her temper and slap or shake me." I stared at him in shock. "You don't remember this?" He shook his head. "I was too young, 3 or 4 years old. Dad would intervene, according to Eleanor. After he died, Mum seemed to get better at controlling her temper, at least the physical manifestations of it. But Eleanor says the verbal and emotional manipulation continued." "Why is she telling you this now?" I wondered aloud. "Guilt, I think. She says she should have spoken up years ago, but Margaret is her older sister, and there was always this unwritten rule in their family that you don't air dirty laundry. Plus, after Dad died, everyone was so focused on supporting Mum in her grief that her behaviour got excused or overlooked. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognised as a sign of deep distress. Eleanor thinks this incident with Lily might be a chance to finally break the cycle. Does Eleanor have any contact with Margaret now? Limited. She calls occasionally to check in, but they're not close. Margaret apparently holds grudges against anyone who challenges her even family. This new information cast Margaret's behaviour in an even more disturbing light. It wasn't just a one-time loss of control, it was part of a long-standing pattern that had been enabled and concealed by family silence. The thought that Margaret had physically harmed James as a child made my blood run cold, but it also explained so much about his complicated relationship with her, his difficulty standing up to her manipulations. "There's more," James said, his voice dropping lower. Eleanor suggested that we might want to consider getting some sort of documentation of what happened to Lily, just in case. In case of what? In case Margaret tries to push for grandparent rights or claims we're alienating her from Lily without cause. I felt a chill at the thought. "Do you think she'd go that far?" James looked troubled. "I don't know. I wouldn't have thought she'd slap Lily either." Eleanor says, "When Margaret feels cornered or challenged, she can become unpredictable." The next day, acting on Eleanor's advice, I called the paediatrician who had examined Lily after the incident and requested a copy of her medical records documenting the bruising and her statement about what had happened. I also wrote down a detailed account of the events while they were still fresh in my memory and asked Amanda to do the same as a witness. These documents went into a folder that I hoped we would never need to use but felt safer having nonetheless. Meanwhile, the tension within the extended family continued to build. The annual Memorial Day gathering at Uncle George's lake house was now just a week away, and we still hadn't decided whether to attend. The event had always been a highlight of Lily's summer, a weekend of swimming cousin time and evening bonfires. But this year, everything was different. "I don't think we should go," I said, as James and I discussed it over dinner prep. "Margaret will be there. It will be uncomfortable for everyone, especially Lily." James chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. "If we don't go, it looks like we're the ones dividing the family, like we're being petty and holding a grudge. Is that really what matters here?" "How it looks." "Of course not," he said quickly. "But this is about more than just one weekend. It's about our place in the family long term. If we start skipping traditional gatherings, we're the ones who will become isolated, not Mom." I had to admit he had a point. Withdrawing completely from family events would only strengthen Margaret's narrative that we were being unreasonable and punitive. "What if we go, but only for Saturday, not the whole weekend?" I suggested as a compromise. That way Lily still gets to see her cousins and participate in the tradition, but we limit the time we have to navigate interactions with Margaret. James nodded thoughtfully. "That might work, and we can make it clear to Uncle George beforehand that we expect Margaret to respect our boundaries while we're there. No attempts to get Lily alone, no bringing up what happened unless it's to apologise." We brought the idea to Lily that evening, making it clear that the choice was ultimately hers. "We can go for just part of the lake house weekend if you want to," I explained. "Grandma Margaret will be there, but Dad or I will be with you the whole time." Lily thought about it, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Will Cousin Zoe be there?" she asked finally. "Yes, and all your other cousins too," James confirmed. "I think I want to go then," Lily decided. "But only if you promise Grandma Margaret won't try to make me hug her or talk to her alone." "We promise," I assured her, though privately I wondered how we would enforce this if Margaret decided to push boundaries. The day before the lake house gathering, I received an unexpected call from Amanda. "I need to warn you about something," she said without preamble. "Margaret has been telling people she's going to use the weekend to clear the air with you and James. I think she's planning some kind of confrontation." My stomach tightened. "Thanks for the heads up. Did she say anything specific about what she has planned?" "Not to me directly. I overheard her talking to Uncle George's wife on the phone. Something about how this has gone on long enough and she's not going to be treated like a pariah in her own family." "Yeah." She seemed to think that face-to-face with everyone around you and James wouldn't be able to maintain your position. After thanking Amanda for the warning, I relayed the information to James. He looked grim but determined. "If she wants a confrontation, she'll get one," he said. "But not on her terms and not in front of Lily." We arrived at the lake house late Saturday morning, having decided that a day trip would be the safest approach. As we pulled into the long gravel driveway lined with pine trees, I could see several cars already parked in front of the sprawling log cabin that served as the main house. My heart rate quickened when I spotted Margaret's silver Mercedes among them. "Remember," James said quietly as we parked, "we stick together. If Mum approaches us, we're..."